So I've just got this today. It's an Atari 2600. It's I think it's the Atari 2600 Junior. It's smaller than the other 2600s that I've seen. Obviously, the big sort of wood box type things that you normally see, or would affect anyway. I got given this by a guy called Craig, who well, not given it. He's given it to me to have a look at, see if I can repair. Because he couldn't get any picture out of it at all. Can't get it to work. And I'm having a similar problem here. I'm just trying to sort of tune it here to see if I can get a picture. I'm just not getting anything. I've tried a couple of tellies. I've got an old black and white telly up there. I just couldn't get any picture on any of the sort of frequencies. And I've tried all the main sort of frequencies that you normally try. It just doesn't seem to work. So I'm probably just going to open it up and just check everything out. I'm definitely getting power to the unit because I've got like a red LED coming through. I believe that even if the game wasn't working, I should get something through the screen, like a black screen or with lines on or something, even if there's no game inserted. I've tried it with and without the game and still not getting anything. So I'm going to open it up and have a bit of a look inside and see if I can work out what's wrong with it. Well, this is the inside of the board. Taking it all apart, take the RF shield off it, which is a little bit fiddly, but I've taken it off. I don't know whether I have to put it back on in or not. I'll have to have a see whether it sits in properly without it. Not really much point in having it if it's not needed, really. So what's happening? We've got the power coming in here, and I've tested the voltages, and the power's coming in, and it goes through this switch here. So I'm definitely getting power to the switch, and I've tested to this capacitor, which kind of discharges back to the ground plane. So that's something to do with voltage regulation. So it's getting to this LED, so we're getting the LED light. Now beyond the LED, it goes through a voltage regulator. And after the voltage regulator, I'm detecting very, very small amounts of voltage. And then when I go to like some of the main chips and test the sort of main voltage inputs on some of these chips, it's very low, and what I understand online is this voltage regulator is often faulty. So I think I'm going to try and replace the voltage regulator, maybe give everything a bit of a clean as well. I mean, not looking too bad shape, this board, really. There's nothing majorly concerning on it, I don't think. Can't see any major issues. There's no like capacitor leakage that's noticeable, particularly. So maybe I'll probably just try replacing that, and then see what happens. So this is the donor voltage regulator I found. I found it on another PCB that I just had. It was left over from an old boiler. I've not really been tried to desolder a voltage regulator before, but it's quite tricky because all the heat gets sapped through into this heat sink. So the heat sink was heating up that it was attached to. Difficult, so I ended up breaking one of the legs off. But also, it was pot riveted to the heat sink. So I suppose I probably could have just transferred the whole heat sink in, but it might not fit inside the case over here. So I've had to drill out the pot rivet to get the pot rivet off. So hopefully, even with that broken leg, I might be able to get this working. Should be alright with a broken leg, because I think there's enough there to bend it over. If you look where they bend over and go under and through the board, so it should be enough. So we'll give that a try. Now, removing this the old voltage regulator wasn't too hard, because I could actually unscrew it. It was just held onto the this ground plane heat sink by a screw and a bolt. So I just unscrewed it, and then it wasn't too hard to heat up the solder to sort of soften up the solder. And then I used my trusty cheapo solder sucker just to suck up the solder. So I'll give that a bit of a clean, a bit of a mess around that area. I don't know what the muck is around there, where that's come from. Probably left over from the manufacturing process. There's probably nothing to worry about, but I'll give it a clean anyway, and then solder on the new board. Sorry, the new voltage regulator. So I replaced this voltage regulator, and it's not made any difference actually. I've been doing a lot more sort of diagnosis, looking for any more sort of faults. I give it a good clean with white vinegar first and isopropyl alcohol. So what I'm getting now is if I give it power, I'm not convinced about the power supply actually. At first I thought it was working all right, but it seems to take a while to get up to voltage. It doesn't immediately give you the right voltage. I think when I first tried it, it must have already been powered up, so it had time to get up to voltage. So I don't know if that's right or wrong. So I'm suspecting maybe get a new power supply. But what happens is if I test the voltage, so this is the bit where the voltage comes in, goes through this switch. So whilst the switch is switched off, this LED stays off. And then the voltage gets up to about what it should be, I think, around, if you check it just before the voltage regulator, just on the right hand side there. Sorry, if you test it here, because this is where the voltage actually comes up to this sort of capacitor here. But if I switch it on, we get the red light on, and then the voltage drops at that point and at that point going in, and then we get zero voltage coming out of the other side of the voltage regulator. So there's no voltage getting into the circuit. From what I read, that could indicate that there's some sort of short on the board somewhere. Some sort of short circuit, which could actually be one of these chips that might actually be faulty. So whether it's worthwhile buying new chips to replace them, I'm not really sure. Or there could be another cause of the short somewhere on the board. But I'm still not 100% sure about this power supply coming in and whether that's just not delivering the right amount of power. I'm not sure. Tried disconnecting this capacitor just to see if that's what's causing the problem. I could replace the other capacitors quite easily because I've probably got capacitors that would replace the other. How many can I see on there? Another 3, I think. There's one there, and then one there. So if I could easily replace those, I think these green things are capacitors as well, aren't they? I might have to have a look in to see what sort of capacitors they actually are, because they might need replacing as well. So that's something I could try, but it's whether or not the owner wants to invest in a new power supply just for something that could possibly be just a faulty board overall. Maybe I should just try replacing the capacitors. These capacitors that I've got, I might give that a try. So we still haven't managed to fix it. I've replaced them with these capacitors, and we're still getting the same problem. Actually, we're getting a slightly higher voltage reading on the out, so maybe it's made some improvement there. But we're kind of running out of user serviceable parts. I mean, these chips are quite commonly could have failed if there's been a dodgy power supply coming to it at some point in its life. But the actual cost of replacing these chips is probably more than, well, it's certainly perhaps not worth it for the cost of the actual system second hand. Once you've added them all up together, if you were to replace them all, it's very difficult to diagnose which one's faulty. The only other things that I think is sort of usable serviceable, or sorry, not user serviceable, but serviceable for me, would be to replace the big capacitor, but I'm going to have to buy a big capacitor to replace that. Or there's the RF unit here, which I understand sometimes can short things out. So I've actually pulled out that capacitor, and that didn't make any difference to the voltages. So I'm wondering whether maybe just to disconnect this from the circuit and see if we still get the problem with the same problem with the voltages. And if we do, if we don't, then maybe I can just do a composite mod on it, and that might be able to fix it. So that's where I'm at the minute. So I'm probably going to remove that and see whether that fixes the problem. Right, so still no joy with this. I tried removing the whole RF unit. I've put it back again because it didn't make any difference to the sort of voltage coming out or anything. So we've still got a problem. We've got, I mean, again, I'm not sure the input for power supply is great. It seems to take a while to get up to the correct voltage, and then we can get the correct voltage pre-power switch. When we switch it on, the voltage drops pre-power switch, and we get a no voltage on the what should be the 5-volt rail, so there's no voltage getting to any of these chips or anything. So I believe that could be some sort of short. I suppose it's possible. It's worth trying a different power supply, but I don't actually have an option, another power supply to try, so that involved buying one. I've replaced all the capacitors on it. Sorry, I haven't replaced all the capacitors. I've replaced all the capacitors for the ones that I had. There's quite a lot of weird capacitors like this one here that, and these green ones, which I don't have anything that's the right rating for them. There's a lot of these little ones which I think are sort of ceramic capacitors anyway, so they're probably all right anyway, so probably not the issue. I've checked the I've checked all over the board to make sure there wasn't any sort of shorts that were obvious on the underside. In fact, I mean, there was actually a couple of shorts which were obvious on there. There was one of these pins down here was bent over and touching another pin, so I've fixed that. There seems to be quite a lot of excess sticking out of these when this was made. I don't know if it's been hand soldered back in the 1980s or machine soldered, but you end up with seem to have quite a lot of excess. And then up here there was a bridge joint somewhere. I think it was there maybe, but actually once you start to sort of shift, pull away the actual solder, you can actually see underneath it. It's actually linked by the PCB anyway. So I think it was deliberately bridged. To be honest with you, I don't think it was a accidental bridge. So anyway, I've sorted those out, and I've also tried to reflow some of the sort of maybe some of the joints that look a bit dull, just to try to reflow them with a bit of solder, just to try and sort of just try and make sure everything's in working order. But I think that's about the limit of what I can do with this. We could try a new power supply, which might be an option. I'll give that to the person who owns this, but I'm not convinced that's going to fix it. I think there's maybe a problem with one of these chips. Like I say, it's probably not going to be economical. I've tried when I switch it on, tried touching the chip to see if they're getting hot, because that can be an indication of a faulty chip, but none of the chips get hot at all when you switch them on. Just doesn't seem to be any power getting through at all. So yeah, that's where I'm at. So just as a last thought, I was trying to find a way to actually deliver a sort of steady 9 volts to the board without, obviously the power supply, we're not sure that works. So I came up with this interesting solution, you might agree. I've tested this now, and it is delivering a steady 90 volts to the board, but when we turn it on, we lose a lot of that voltage, and there's nothing coming onto that 5-volt rail. So I think, even if this didn't have the right enough power or whatever to power this board, we'd be getting something on that 5-volt rail, and we're just getting nothing at all. So there must be a fault on another component, which I haven't managed to diagnose yet. So buying a new power supply, I don't think is going to fix this. So despite my confidence that there was a fault on the board, I proposed to the owner if he wanted to buy another power supply anyway, just to try a different power supply. So he wanted to give it a try, so we got one for about £8.80, I think it was, on eBay. And as soon as I plugged it in, it worked straight away. So clearly my 9-volt battery string solution wasn't delivering enough. Probably not enough ampage. It should have had the right voltage, but just not enough ampage really to power up the board. And the voltage regulator, I think, was only kicking out a very low voltage just because it didn't just didn't have enough voltage going in to actually work properly, the voltage regulator. So as soon as we got a sufficient voltage coming in, it seems that actually when you actually test the sort of voltages on sort of the power supplies that, which is rated at 9-volt DC, they tend to be actually kicking out more like 13 or 14 when they're not connected to anything. But then as soon as you connect them up, they
can deliver a sort of a steady 9 volts at a high enough ampage, you know, to power all the sorts of components. So obviously quite a lot of work I've done in the board, a lot of cleaning, replaced a few of the components, which probably would have gone eventually anyway, so they're probably worth replacing the voltage regulator and a few of those capacitors anyway, so probably not a massive waste of time. But the power supply's fixed it, finished off the fix, and it's working now, so I'll just show you a little bit of footage of the machine in action.